First of all, we must again decide where the center is. So we make a little dot. We want to know also which way this flower is going to face. Let's say the flower is going to face in this direction. So I'm going to set a line. We can make a little arrow there, letting you know that it's going in this direction. But here is our center. Let me make it just a little bigger so that you can see. Once I have set the lines, and they will be somewhat equal on either side, I'm going now to make my little lines on the center area. These lines now set up the oval that I'm going to make. Let's now set in an oval. Let's turn it now so it's right straight up to you. You'll notice that these two lines are perpendicular to one another. Let's now begin some sketching. First of all, we're going to again come up to the top and sketch around, creating a petal right around that center. But this time we're going to have a petal coming up and around this side area, showing how it is cupping up. Cupping up. So let's now make it cup. Let's begin again with our yellow-red, and this time turning our plate just slightly. Come in and again set your line and pull in towards that center. Pulling in towards the center, but remember, we don't need to smooth. If you do, smooth very lightly, but follow the lines that you would have made by radiating around that particular center. Once we have come over to this area here, within this oval, we're now going to start this little cupping area. Let's turn our plate and go down to the base and pull up, so that you are now working with that cupping area, cupping of the petal. Let's wipe out this little center a little bit more for you right now so that you can see just exactly what is happening. Let's now start setting in these outer larger petal areas. Let's extend over and pull into and let this underlap this first petal. Then once we have those two main petals established, let's now build around it by coming in and working this area. When we do this, we turn our plate and put our brush down and pulling in towards this center area. Now we can stop and see what is happening. You'll notice that now this particular area is starting to flute out. It's going now to come down a little past this oval with a petal starting to extend down. And then around on this edge of the oval, we can now start to extend back up with this area of that petal. Turn your plate again and begin pulling in towards the center area, pulling in towards the center area. Notice that we're getting a shape now to the poppy. Let's now go back and again pulling in always towards the center. Everything is radiating towards the center. All strokes must go that way. We now have a shape that we will now cut out lights and start to really see the modeling of this flower. So we're going now to make sure that our wipeout brush is clean. This is our synthetic wipeout brush. And we're going to come in and push down in an area where we want it a little bit higher in scalloping, a little higher scallop right in this area, and just make a few little scallop edges right along this line. Wipe out now by pulling down. Notice the cupping and the highlighting. Pull down until you have created a nice little cupping within that area. Take your brush again and going to petal 1. Start again by taking your brush and then pivot slightly to your right. Then pull in towards the center, wiping out a highlight, pulling in towards the center, pulling in, making this somewhat crinkly. Always leave a little bit of a darker area in between so that when you wipe out, you're not wiping out one big flat stroke. You're using the side of your brush to create a little crinkly look to your flower. Now, looking at any outer edge that you might want to extend out of, looking at the crinkly outer edge, so you may want to push in a place or two, creating a little bit of a scallop, and then coming back in and scalloping just slightly on an outer edge, following down with a little more wipeout, softening with your softer brush. Being this is a first fire, we will come back and soften just slightly without trying to lose all of our edges. If you wish, clean your brush well, making sure the little area here in the center has been cleaned and just washed with a little chartreuse. Take your silk again, or a wipeout tool of some sort, and take out a few of your little stamens again. This is a first fire that we're going to be doing, and then we'll be coming in and painting a second fire on this flower. We now see our plate fired for the first time, getting ready now for the second fire. Let's go into the second firing color, which would be your blood red, and coming in and separating a few of your petals. Like, say, for instance, in an area that you may have a little shadowing. This way we can get a little more definite feeling to any petal that we might have. Coming into an area, say, right into this area, right underneath this little turn back, giving a little more of a heavier stroke, but not really covering all of the flower. giving a little more depth wherever you feel you may need depth to bring out those petals. A little more underneath, very softly. Now take your brush and clean it off, going into your violet tones, and then right over your first fire color, come in and softly give a feeling of these little stamens that are in a violet tone. Come back with your silk or wipeout tool and dig out more of these little centers coming down into your first fire color. And remember where some of the violet tones are covering up some of your first fire wipeouts in the stamen area and giving a nice feeling of dimension. You can at this time come in with your leaf green, giving a feeling of a little more shadowing on the opposite side. So turn your plate around and come in with just a little hint of color. Coming back. Now, with just a little done to this flower, let's now fire this and come back in for a third fire. We're now going into our third value color, which would be your red grape. With the red grape, we're going to accentuate some of our areas that are already in depth, turning our plate around and coming back in with the red grape and giving a little more depth to our color. We can then come back in with red grape mixed with our blood red and give a little more depth right around this particular part of our flower. This bringing out this particular flower with a little more contrast. Now then, come back in this time, making your center again very dark with your violet by adding just a hint of your black to it at this time. Watching too much black, as sometimes this has a tendency to oxidize with your violet tones, coming in quite dark around this little green centered area. Wipe out a little bit of the highlights from the first fire that you had just covered. Coming back in. And then coming in and giving a little more definite depth with a little of your antique green and leaf green mixed together. Come back with your silk wrapped around your finger or any handy wipeout tool that you may have that you prefer, and re-establish some of these little stamen areas. And at this time, use your liner brush with this very same colors and extend out just a little with a few little dots, giving a feeling that there may be a multitude of little stamens with a few scattering ones that are showing in the very upper area. Let's now take and fire this one again, and fire this for our third time, and then we'll come back and take a look at it in a fired stage. Now we're looking at our poppy for the third firing. You'll find that when you are working with a poppy, you will use a less definite leaf, not to make your leaves very sharp and hard. Give a very soft look, and this will give a very soft feeling to your painting.